Let me tell you something that no one on CNN, no one on Fox News, no one in the halls of Washington or Tel Aviv or Tehran wants you to understand. Because if you understand it, truly understand it, the entire illusion of this war, this so-called clash of civilizations, this grand moral crusade against nuclear evil collapses like a house of cards in a hurricane. There is one country sitting in a very comfortable chair right now watching this whole Middle East burn, quietly smiling, refilling its glass, and getting richer by the hour. And it is not America. And it is not Israel. And it is certainly not Iran. Before I tell you who it is, I want you to think like a historian, not like a journalist who tells you what happened yesterday, not like a politician who tells you what they want you to feel. Think like someone who looks at centuries, not news cycles. Because history is not a collection of accidents. History is a chessboard. And the players who win are not the ones making the loudest moves. They are the ones who set up the board 3 moves before the game even begins. Now, I have been studying geopolitics for over 2 decades. I have lived in China. I have watched the United States from the inside and the outside. I have watched how empires behave when they feel threatened. And I have watched how rising powers behave when they sense opportunity. And what is happening right now in the Middle East is not a war about nuclear weapons. It is not a war about terrorism. It is not even a war about Israel's security. Those are the costumes this war is wearing. What this war is actually about is the final desperate attempt by a declining empire to control the one thing that keeps its financial system alive. Energy flows. Think about what happened on February 28th, 2026. The United States and Israel launched nearly 900 strikes in 12 hours. They killed the supreme leader of Iran. They assassinated top generals. They bombed nuclear sites, missile facilities, military infrastructure. The scale of it was twice the firepower of shock and awe in Iraq in 2003. Twice. And yet here we are more than a month later, and the Iranian regime has not collapsed. The Strait of Hormuz is partially blocked. Oil is above $90 a barrel. American soldiers are dying in Kuwait, in Bahrain, in Iraq. Hezbollah is firing rockets into northern Israel again. Lebanon is being invaded again. And the United States cannot rally a single major ally to its side. Ask yourself a simple question. Who benefits? Not emotionally, not ideologically. Who benefits structurally, financially, strategically? When you ask that question with cold, clear eyes, the answer points in one direction and one direction only. It points to Beijing. China is not in this war. China has not fired a single missile. China has not sent a single soldier. China has not even raised its voice particularly loudly at the United Nations. And yet China is winning this war more decisively than any military power on the battlefield. Let me show you exactly how, layer by layer, because this is not simple. And anyone who tells you it is simple is either lying to you or has not done the homework. The first layer is energy. China is the world's largest importer of oil. For decades, this was considered China's greatest strategic vulnerability. If America controlled the Persian Gulf, if America controlled the sea lanes, if America could squeeze the Strait of Hormuz, it could theoretically strangle the Chinese economy. This was a foundational pillar of American grand strategy. Henry Kissinger understood it. Zbigniew Brzezinski understood it. Every serious American strategist understood that controlling Middle Eastern energy was fundamentally about containing China. Now, look at what is happening. The Strait of Hormuz is disrupted, but China signed long-term energy deals with Russia after 2022. China has been building pipelines through Central Asia for years. China has diversified its energy supply precisely because it anticipated this moment. Meanwhile, the disruption hurts Europe, hurts Japan, hurts South Korea, hurts every American ally far more than it hurts China. The very weapon America built to contain, China has misfired and is now hitting America's own alliance system. The second layer is the dollar. Here is something your financial news will not explain clearly enough. The entire American financial system, the reason America can print money, run deficits, maintain its military empire, rests on what economists call dollar hegemony. Oil is priced in dollars. If you want to buy oil, you need dollars. This creates a permanent global demand for American currency. This is the invisible tax that the whole world pays to America. For decades, the Gulf states recycled their oil profits, their petrodollars, back into American treasury bonds, American stocks, American real estate. This is what kept the American financial machine running. Now, Saudi Arabia has been in quiet negotiations to price some oil sales in Chinese yuan. The UAE has been doing the same. Iran obviously has been trading outside the dollar system for years. Every month that this war continues, every month that America looks like a destabilizing force in the Middle East rather than a security guarantor, the Gulf states edge slightly further away from the dollar system and slightly closer to Chinese-led alternatives. This war, which was supposed to demonstrate American power, is actually accelerating the erosion of the financial foundation of American power. The third layer is technology and manufacturing. While America is spending billions of dollars on missiles, on aircraft carriers, on munitions, on the enormous logistical cost of projecting military force 10,000 kilometers from its shores, China is spending its resources on semiconductors, on electric vehicles, on artificial intelligence, on Belt and Road Initiative that is quietly binding the economies of Africa, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, and Latin America to Beijing. Every cruise missile that hits a target in Iran costs approximately $1 to $2 million. China is using that equivalent investment to build infrastructure that will generate returns for decades. This is the fundamental strategic divergence of our era. America is investing in destruction. China is investing in construction, in infrastructure, in systems that quietly accumulate value over time. History has a way of revealing with almost brutal consistency which kinds of investments compound and which simply burn resources in the moment. Empires that build tend to leave legacies that endure. Empires that exhaust themselves in constant conflict often discover too late that power is not just about what you can destroy, but what you can sustain. And this brings us to a deeper layer of this conflict, one that goes beyond missiles and military headlines into the realm of perception, legitimacy, and long-term influence. The fourth layer is soft power. It is about how nations are seen, how their actions are interpreted, and whether they are perceived as stabilizing forces or disruptive ones. Across much of the global South Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America, South Asia, and the broader Muslim world, there is a growing narrative about Western intervention that has been building for decades. When military action appears to override diplomatic possibilities, it reinforces that narrative, whether the full context is understood or not. Statements and reactions from institutions like the United Nations and assessments from bodies such as the International Atomic Energy Agency inevitably shape how these events are perceived globally. In that perception battle, legitimacy becomes as valuable as military success. At the same time, China has positioned itself carefully not as a moral savior, but as a calculated advocate of restraint, dialogue, and multilateralism. This posture is not driven by altruism, it is driven by strategic clarity. Each time a major power is seen as acting unilaterally or aggressively, China's model of non-interference becomes more appealing to countries seeking stability and development without entanglement. And it is precisely in these regions, the developing world, where the future balance of economic and political influence is being shaped. The fifth layer is even more consequential, and it is one that historians will likely study for decades: the strategic implications for Taiwan. Military resources are finite. Every aircraft carrier deployed, every advanced fighter like the F-35, every missile defense system, every logistical chain stretched across distant theaters represents a commitment that cannot be duplicated elsewhere at the same time. When a significant portion of those resources is absorbed in one region, it inevitably alters the strategic posture in another. This is not speculation, it is the fundamental arithmetic of power projection. From Beijing's perspective, this moment is not about cheering for one side or another. It is about observation and learning. Military planners study conflicts not emotionally, but analytically. They examine how air defense systems respond under pressure, how logistics hold up under sustained strain, how coordination functions in multi-front scenarios. They look for patterns, weaknesses, and thresholds, points where systems begin to fracture under stress. These observations do not produce immediate action, but they inform long-term calculations. And if there has ever been a question about timing, about opportunity, about when conditions might align more favorably, those calculations are being revisited with renewed intensity. Yet it would be a mistake to turn this into a simplistic narrative of one rising power and one declining one. Reality is far more complex. China faces its own internal challenges: economic pressures, structural imbalances, demographic decline, and the long-term consequences of rapid growth. These are not minor issues. They shape the limits of what China can sustain. Leadership in Beijing, including figures like Xi Jinping, must constantly balance external ambition with internal stability. In that sense, a world in which competitors are overextended can provide strategic breathing room, but it does not eliminate underlying vulnerabilities. What emerges from all of this is a pattern that history has shown time and again. In geopolitics, dominance is not about being strongest everywhere at all times. It is about concentrating strength where it matters most. At the moment, it matters most. Powers that understand this conserve resources, avoid unnecessary entanglements, and expand influence incrementally. Over time, those incremental gains accumulate, and what once seemed like a stable balance begins to shift. But beyond the abstractions of strategy and power, there is a human reality that cannot be ignored. Conflicts are not just contests between states, they are lived experiences for millions of individuals. Families are shattered, communities are displaced, and entire generations grow up shaped by trauma and uncertainty. The language of geopolitics, efficiency, leverage, positioning often strips away that human dimension. Yet, it is precisely that dimension that gives these events their true weight and meaning. Meanwhile, far from the immediate violence, in offices and boardrooms, in ministries and financial institutions. Decisions continue to be made. Contracts are signed. Infrastructure projects are planned. Trade relationships are expanded. Vacuums created by instability do not remain empty for long. They are filled by those prepared to move into them. This is not a matter of morality or sentiment. It is the enduring logic of great power competition. It has operated this way for centuries, and it continues to do so today. So the question is not whether one feels comfortable with this reality. The question is whether one understands it. Because understanding it is the first step toward asking a more meaningful question, one that goes beyond immediate victories or defeats. When this conflict eventually ends, as all conflicts do, what kind of world will remain? What alliances will have shifted? What systems will have been weakened or strengthened? What narratives will have taken root in the minds of nations and populations? If a country emerges claiming victory but has expended vast resources, strained its alliances, and accelerated challenges to its financial and strategic foundations, what does that victory truly mean? If another nation suffers immense physical destruction but finds its ideological influence spreading beyond its borders, has it truly been defeated? If a state achieves tactical military success but becomes more isolated diplomatically, how sustainable is that success over time? And then there is China, largely absent from the battlefield, yet deeply engaged in the broader strategic environment. It does not claim moral superiority in this context, nor does it present itself as a hero. Instead, it operates with patience, focusing on long-term positioning, economic integration, and the steady accumulation of influence. Whether one views that approach with admiration, concern, or skepticism, it reflects a disciplined understanding of how power can be built without direct confrontation. In the end, the most important question is not who wins this war in the immediate sense. It is who defines what winning means in the decades that follow, because that definition, shaped by economics, perception, alliances, and strategic endurance, will determine not just the outcome of this conflict, but the structure of the world that emerges from it.